Toyota in second place, the second BMW in third, and then Toyota in fourth as well. Thanks to Tony Delahunty. You'll hear a lot more from him if you're watching on British Eurosport later on tonight and into the early hours this morning, and we shall look forward to their action. And there's a big spin, there's a big accident coming down towards the chicane. One of the Toyotas, I think it's the #1 car, but I'm not 100% sure about that. I think it was the #1 car. It's lost it under braking. I think Martin Brundle is driving that car. It is the #1 machine, and another dramatic incident, certainly not as dramatic as the one we saw earlier on for Mercedes, but a spin coming down to that first chicane, and
it appeared the car just pulled straight over to the left. It sort of looked weird. I couldn't see the whole incident, but obviously they kept on looking underneath the car when it came in, and maybe there's some. I would assume that was obviously there was something going on as well.
Yes, well, Toyota seem to be having all that. Look, here we are once again. That car under braking.
It just pivoted left, should we say, straight into the barrier. I imagine either some, puncture on the rear, loose rear wheel, something's definitely amiss there. And obviously that corner, just when the brakes went on, or as he applied the brakes, the car just violently turned left.
Yeah, but that right. I think there was something wrong with that right rear. We've just been joined by Hans Stuck. Welcome, Hans. Very nice to see you joining us in the Eurosport commentary booth. What was your interpretation of that? Did you get a chance to have a look just then on the replay?
Yeah, it looked, first of all, hello everybody. It looked kind of strange, You see he's a bit on the right side here, you can see. But obviously you see the spark, so whether he had a puncture before, or maybe as it looks the right rear wheel was out of any direction, so maybe a broken push rod or something in the suspension that caused him to this accident. Very unfortunate.
It is very unfortunate. Brundle and Collard and Suspiri seems to have been having all of the bad luck of Toyota Team Europe so far. It's all been going wrong for this car, whereas the other two seem to be running, as we heard a little while ago, without any problems. Sparks flying from under that car now. There's an awfully long way still to get back, isn't there?
You have all kinds of thoughts now going home to the pits, and the only thing you're aiming for is get home quickly, get the repair job done, get back out on the track again, and get back in the race. But there are some funny things going in your head, up and down, and it's a very bad feeling, to be honest.
Yes, and Martin Brundle has put so much effort into Le Mans 99, very much aiming for victory as he was. It's just gone from bad to worse here today. He led the race in the early stages, remember? If you were with us at the start of the race, he was on pole position. Just look how slowly that car's going. And of course, for the other cars out there, this is a major issue.
Now, he's going really sideways, and we see some more flames coming out. So hopefully he can keep the car on the left side of the track, that no other car in this sort of funny light conditions now. I mean, as a driver, you see the white flags, but you tend to stay on the throttle, and try to avoid. But if a car is going this slow, it's always very hazardous not to hit it.
Yes, that's right. A nasty possibility there. And we'll just have to hope that he can get it back in one piece, still limping his way slowly.
Yeah, obviously there's really something going on the suspension in the rear that makes the car go so sideways.
That's a replay. We're just taking a look at the replay there once again of what happened.
Like the rear wheel had actually collapsed at that stage.
Yeah.
It was already, by the time before the car hit anything, it looked like the wheel, and it just looked like it had either just broken or come loose.
I think so. I think you're right. I think that whatever caused that spin, something had already broken, hadn't it?
Yes, because the car hadn't touched anything when the car was sideways. You could see the wheel already pitched right over.
Yeah, so it looks very much as though that's some sort of mechanical problem causing the spin, but he's just got such a long way to go to try and get back, and with other cars heading towards him at over 200 miles an hour at various points of this circuit. That is not a very nice experience to be driving. Just look at that. It looks like it's going to shed that tyre as well any moment.
Yeah, and especially on the way home now, when the car is not in its regular ride height, part of suspension are touching the ground. That's where the sparks are coming from, and it means a major repair job. Not only like the change the wheel, you have to change suspension, get the alignment in a fairly condition to make the car drivable. So we see this car for a while in the pits.
I think so. I think you're absolutely right. Understatement there, Hans. Hans, give us a little bit of your thoughts in terms of what's happening right now in the race with BMW sandwiching Toyota. They're all running up front. Are you at all surprised to see BMW, Toyota, or was this pretty much what you expected?
Yes, I am surprised. Actually, I thought that it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be Toyota, BMW, and I'm surprised how the speed is in this race. BMW are running a very good speed, and they're also running very conservative on fuel. And that what always made the Toyota to go fast. The Toyota had to get back the time he lost in the early pit stops. He regularly came in a lap earlier, and that is also the reason why on the number 2 car they had to change front brake rotors early, because you could see those guys were really trying hard on the braking to get the BMW back. And I can tell you, in this race, the heat is on. You better believe it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of pressure down there, isn't there? But
yeah, but still, after these hours now, there's everything open. And when we look out, just got back from the track. It looks pretty funny outside with the weather, so everything can happen. And we have, I would say, let's say 4 cars still right up front there, and also in 5th position, the Audi surprises me. He's a lap down or 2 laps down, but he's still there. And number 8 car is running pretty well, you know, so
yeah.
Everything is in the box.
That's right, anything can happen, as they say. And,
anything.
Well, I'm sure anything will. We've seen plenty of action already in this race, all sorts of ups and downs for various people. We've still got one of the Paydos cars in the top 10, the Nissans, which have been going better and better. They've been working their way up as well. We've got a Nissan in 6th place and a Nissan in 9th, although I have to say that number 22 car that was doing so well earlier does seem to have lost a bit of ground in recent laps, and it now finds itself some 4 laps behind the leader. Hans, you watch all this going on. Do you still miss it? Do you still miss being out there?
Oh yes, you better believe it, and I can promise you this will be maybe the only Le Mans I'm missing. But I have to stick to a decision of my boss, like Gerhard Berger. He didn't want me to drive this race because he liked to have the young hotshots on the car. But I'm happy. I race in the States this year in American Le Mans Series and US RRC, so I take the chance. I'm not arguing. But of course, coming here gives me funny feelings, especially when practice started on Thursday. It was not very nice, but I stick with it. And here we see the poor Toyota. He's on his way home, and maybe it would be better if he would lose this right tire, call it a piece of rubber that's still hanging out. It would make the car maybe nicer to drive without this piece of rubber on it.
Nice to drive, though, I think. Not exactly the words to describe what that car must be like inside, shaking and rattling.
Oh, now he's stopped, you know, you see.
Oh, right, he has
It is actually pretty difficult to get the right amount of speed, not to have more things destroyed. It can very easily happen that he breaks a drive shaft or something. That means the car comes to a stop, because then those cars, I would imagine, are not running solid lock differentials. And if he breaks the drive shaft by any suspension damage, that means he's out of the race now.
Yeah,
he could be out of the race.
I think he keeps turning the lights off, trying to get the engine re-fired, and I think he's got it going once again.
So, guys, let's keep our fingers crossed that he can get back.
No, it stopped again. I think he's really struggling.
Maybe there's something thrashing around there. May have actually dislodged something, because it's not voluntarily stopped there. He's still desperate to get it running. Yeah,
still trying to get it back to the pits, but it doesn't look as though it's going to happen. Down at the Arnage corner, and the marshal's doing a good job trying to warn everybody that this car is sitting at the side of the road stationary. This is always a difficult time at night for the other drivers, obviously. Hans, I know our German colleagues want a chance to speak to you before this broadcast ends, so thank you very much for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
Lovely to have you with us in the booth here, and hopefully we'll see you over the course of the weekend.
Sure, whenever you need me, just call me. I'm right there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Good night.
Okay.
We're now having another replay of the accident that happened, that caused that, and you can see the wheel. I'm sure you could see it earlier on that it was bent over. It looked like more of a suspension failure that actually triggered it, and you know, it just obviously the car violently turned into the barrier, and I would say the car is out. I mean, obviously we're looking at it stationary there, but I personally believe that if that had got back, there would have been so much damage to the underneath of that car, it probably would have had to be retired even if it made its way back.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. A few other bits of news coming in. David Brabham said that they had a bit of a problem on the last stint. In fact, a fairly big problem. A deflating tyre, and the tyre exploded. Otherwise, the car running pretty well. Meanwhile, Hugh Chamberlain said the Viper seems to like staying in the pits. It doesn't want to keep going out on track. It keeps coming back in with a variety of problems. The latest have been some electronic problems, so they're hoping to get all those cured. I think those Chamberlain boys are probably the most busy of all in the pit lane so far in this Le Mans. Right from the word go, they've had problems with either of their cars. And meanwhile, poor old Martin Brundle, there he is, stranded out at Arnage. And it does very much look as though it's all going to be over for the British driver. Well, he might even have time to jump on an aeroplane and fly over to Montreal to watch the Grand Prix. I wonder if he will. Shouldn't think so. He'll probably have a weekend off after all this.
Well, it's funny you should say that. When I was over in the pits earlier on, You talk about Hugh Chamberlain. He happened to be sprinting down with some parts, which...
Sprinting?
Yes, if anybody knows the physique of Hugh, you'll know that that's actually a fairly awesome sight. But he couldn't actually stop, so I chased him down, and he had an armful, or should I say a handful of little bits for his car at that time. So